di pala. Stage of the burn day. Stage, not the extensiveness. Next, measure the burn extensiveness. Unsa ka grabe ang burn using the rule of nines. No, the rule of nines is the most commonly used, especially kung pinaspasay na measurement for burns. And lastly, identify surgical and medical intervention. So I expect once we're done, kailan mo nila, no? You are well acquainted with the outcomes. So kaya niyo tanan. So if makaya niyo tanan na outcomes, you should be able to pass a burn REVA easily. Totoo ba? Do you believe? Mutuo mo? Makapasar mo burns if mo na yung REVA or di? Di mo mutuo? Wala mo mutuo? I believe it. I believe. No, just listen, understand, and of course study enough. Okay, let's do this. Let's begin. So, by definition, a burn is defined as soft tissue damage caused by exposure or overexposure in some cases, such as burns due to sunburns, no, to thermal sources, chemical agents, or electrical contact. So, taasa ni sir, pamuban pag yun nato, no? We can still actually move it, no, not move it, but compress it further. So, if we compress the definition, it immediately becomes external soft tissue damage by exposure to harmful materials or sources. Next, pagid, sus, pagamihan pagid, skin damage by hazard, no, na hazard na nakakause sa skin damage, and in its entirety, that's what we call burn. Okay, so when you discuss definition, yun na. No, if you're able to understand the definition, you can actually shorten it. No, there's a saying by Einstein, no, that the person who can discuss a concept in simple terms has a good grasp on the topic or the concept, no? So I believe in God. So pwede mo Bisaya REVA? Pwede naman yun, basta masabtan lang ka. But again, REVA magyud is a formal thing. It's a formal assessment. So you are expected actually to speak in not Filipino, speak in English, no? So kana if may mo pag English po, alam po sige Bisaya. Okay, lain di po na magsige Bisaya, no? Next, let's go to epidem. So epidem, no, burns is the fourth most common cause of mortality and morbidity. So in the world, okay, in the whole world, mo ni pinaka-common cause niya. So a lot of people na they die because of burns, no. So scalding is the most common cause of mortality. So what do you mean by scalding? Nalapuan og init na liquid, no. It can be hot water, hot oil, a hot chemical, you can die from that. So it's the most common cause. And usually, children are the ones who die because of burns. No? Again, usually children are the ones who die because of burns. Okay? When you're older naman yun, you have more surface area, no, dili kay madali o kamatay ang person. No? Next one, occurs in 450 to 500,000 people annually in the world. No? So, not actually in the world, but this is in the Philippines. This is from international statistics on first and second. 450 to 500,000 is Philippine statistics. The mortality rate is 195 to 200,000 people annually. So half, no, or less than half die from burns. Epidem, so again, occurs commonly in early morning and late afternoon. Ano man, gialimungawan or gikapoy. So, wala na gawin na og tarong, no, especially scalding or burns due to hot water. Very common in early morning, kanang bago pa mata. No, dakan pa kayo giyon na lain nya mayabo ang gikupta na kape or ang cha, patay, scald it. So late afternoons also, no, usually this also happens when you stay early morning man gyud. This can also happen because let's say you forgot to plug or unplug something, no, so you forgot to unplug something, nasunog na daw ba yung balay, you got a burn, no. Late afternoons may also occur. Kapatay mo na usually ang mga sunog kay late afternoon or early morning sad, because these are the times magyud that people are the most what do you call that in English, no, least cautious. Di kay sila least cautious or si term na watchful, no, di na kay sila watchful at these times, no? So again, it occurs more in children than in adults, as I said, and usually children are the mortalities. Dili kay common, not really dili kay common, pero mas common yun sa bata rather than adults. So it's either children or older adults are easily burned. None naman older adults. For children, daphag So older adults, dili daphag pero they already have underlying issues na they might cause burns such as poor perception, poor balance, na siya gikupta na init, na yabo. So again, next is male is greater than female because men are more prone to this because of occupation. No? Men are usually the ones in occupations that require holding of hot material. So muna mas common ang guys ma-burn ang guys usually more than females. So good job girls, we're more cautious than us. Next one occurs more in the months of March and April. So I think you know why that's the case. Okay, because these are the hotter months, hotter months ni siya. So di ba we always have the tawag yan sa Pinas kanang fire prevention month during March, April, and May. So again, it's more common those times because it's hotter in those times, it's not because, let me get this straight. It's not because na mas init ni mga panahon na in the cities it's not because mas init niya. Wala gabihan sa kainit, nasunog ang papel or ano. No, it's because appliances are turned on more during these times. Sige kag electric fan, sige og appliance, aircon and whatnot, so mas prone to accidents. Like mubuto ang plug, mubuto ang socket, so mas prone siya sunog. In other countries, again, usually burns more commonly occur in times such as their summers. Sa Pinas, it's March and April. In other countries, of course, it's going to be June, July, August, because those are the summertime for the places with four weather, not four weathers, but four seasons, such as America. So yeah, next. So as I said, three causes gina siya. Thermal, chemical, and electrical. These are the three primary causes of burns. So first off, the most common one, of course, of them all is thermal burns. So this is caused by direct exposure to heat. Again, direct exposure to heat. Scalding is the number one. Most common household cases. So again, naibata, gadinanghag, nagdangandagan, naigo nila yung papa or nayabo ang sa kabaso, nainit kayo, lapwa, syagit na yun si Inday or si Dodong. Sa ingon ni Mama, basta mapaso na, mirese. Mirese. Wailain ingon. Ang bata, gahilak na, sa ingong mama, mirese. Da. So again, very prevalent in children. Cellphone. Say cellphone, so nalapwa, napaita po. Next, extreme cold. What happens in extreme cold? You get what we call frostbite. Sir, frostbite the eye is considered a burn? Yes, it's considered a burn. The overexposure or the loss of temperature, or not the temperature of heat, will lead to a burn. Kaya so pwede ka ma-burn due to extreme cold. Yes, Lastly, radiation. So I think this is the worst type of burn that you can get. Any exposure to sunlight or exposure to radioactive substances. So, hindi lang ko ma-show yung picture, but I think you've seen pictures of people who've been exposed to high radiation. Hubag nilang ng their ears and their nose and their mouth are going to start to bleed. That's due to high radiation. So, not the best thing you can see in a day. Next one, chemical burns, very commonly caused by bleach. Yes, kanang kusog kay manglaba diha. Kabanya mo kasi mag-manual laba dire. I don't expect everyone is magkuso-kuso, pero if you use bleach on your shirts or clothes before, di ba, murag di ba kay murag kabanya mo na may after kay medyo murag manakit inyong kamot or something, katul siya. Kasuway mo na kasi mo gamit og bleach on their clothes. Mangatol na yung kamot or sometimes even mga red spots because bleach actually burns your skin. Alright? Okay, it actually burns your skin. Tarungon yun ninyo og waswas. But tarungon yun waswas. Or if you're not like me, ayun lang kuskusa samtang napay bleach. Okay, nagbinuko mo si sir, kanabi taong naglabalaba pa ka o kaya lamang pag high school pag yun, di pag ilim. Taka lang ko, butang bleach dito, nagkuso-kuso, nangatol mo ang kamot mo na dito. Nangatol siya kay na-irritate imong skin. So actually burn na siya. Next, ammonia. Of course, patay mo sa imong mama kung naglimpyo mo sa CR, no, sa mukas mirisi. Sa mo na naglimpyo mo CR, no, yan nagbutang mo ammonia or hydrochloric acid, di ba? Do you to those who clean their CRs? Is it a smart thing to do na gayabo na mo hydrochloric acid nya mo tunog mo dito sa CR? Kinsay kulok ko mubuhat na ambot lang gid ninyo inom sa tagtiyaga may ha. Do not do that, no? Di ba? Banwasi sa nagtubig, no? Di ba? Biyaan pa na for mga 20 to 30 minutes, no? Para mo dilute, no? Para mahimo siya water because hydrochloric acid actually turns into H2O when it's in contact with the air and the water within the CR. So, mo dilute na siya kadugay. Guys, no? So, sa dila na. Nang giuban magdaydali, no, gisapot na kay gisugog limpyo sa CR, no, sa mga maigo diha, no, ditsog tunog, paso ditso. No, so there's a sad story about this, no, kini si hydrochloric acid. Namgi mga other people who commit suicide by drinking hydrochloric acid. No, I knew someone, no, a friend of a friend, no, that drank hydrochloric acid to commit suicide. It's not a good sight. Naman, wala siya namatay ditso. So, but namatay gyapon siya a few months later. Naman kay naluto ang iyang esophagus. So, naluto ang iyang not only the esophagus but also the trachea. So, liso na siya ginhawa. She had to be na-surgery dapat gibuhat pero nagsige naman siya og asphyxiate, no, mag-aspirate na siya o di na siya kakaon og tarong. So, eventually she actually died. No, so inya na kaglabi si hydrochloric acid. Kaya di ba, have you seen kanang mga shows na di ba na nagano ko sa to na sa Lida, may telenovela sa GMA sa una or sa ABS pa to na kana bitong mag-away niya. Gisawilik og hydrochloric acid ang naong bilib ko na kay dim kay katuhan na gyud kay asan kagikan og hydrochloric acid so niadto pa ka sa CR nya gikuha ka sa hydrochloric acid or niadto pa ka sa inyong bangira. Imo pa gipunit ang hydrochloric acid. Imo din giablihan. Imo na gisawilik sa naong. You did too many steps. Bakit mo na parang you did too many steps, no? Kaya di ba kung maglagot kag tao, usually niya magbugno mo. Wala pang tigay panahon tingali, di ba? Na muadto pa ka sa CR, muadto sa bagiran, niya mukuha sa hydrochloric acid. Mutuo ko nang kinumutay, pero may bungi ko ng away-away sa novela na anong ni siya, nikalit na siya kupot o hydrochloric acid lagi. Asa nagikan? No, so muna, di ko mutuhan ng mga telenovela. No? Kitamde mo ng mga memes. No? Kaya namin mo, what's happening? Something so hasang bitin na yun bitaw. So kita gustiyan kita ko. So yeah, lastly, car battery acid. This does not happen usually sa Pinas. And then car battery acid, not very common. Usually in the US ni siya. And then mga cars sa US, no proper disposing systems pa, takalaglabay. No, so that's why it's very common for them. No, so basic chemicals also cause burns, not just the acidic ones, but also the basic chemicals. Kuya gini, no? And if so, that's why you're not supposed to put any chemicals on your body. Nabitay, no, I think there are kanabitawin yung beauty products, girls. There are some of them that actually have chemicals in them. Muna may buong ko na you girls like putting them on, di ba? Do you know, di ba, there's a petition now in PETA na to stop term na cosmetic companies for using rabbits, di ba? Have you seen that commercial na mugamit sila rabbits to test their what we call cosmetic products on? Have you seen that commercial before? You should watch it, no? Because ilang gamito ng rabbits, they put the chemicals on the rabbits to see if it's safe. No, so lugi mga rabbits, mga sunog ang lawas, mabuta, mamatay, they burn their skin off. Yan, not a good sight, no. So actually, you girls, may mga products that are like that, especially the cheaper ones, no. So if mo palit man lang mo, ayan natin ang mga batuhon, though ang mga mahalon lang usually ang buhat ato no, na mo test sa mga animals. So I would not recommend. No, the best type of beauty is the natural beauty. Di ba, girls? Kasi mo agree na, the best type of beauty is natural beauty. Wala ni agree. Patay. Okay, no, not judging. Next, no, electrical burns. Last and the least common. No, again, the most common is your thermal. The least common is your electrical. No, dili kay na common na electrical. So electrical is from 1,000 to 200,000 volts. Kini ang gitawag nito na high voltage. Usually, if high voltage, patay na yung gaditso. I'm gonna be frank. If you get electrocuted with 200,000 volts, you're good as dead. Panagsara ka kita ni mabuhi ana. Low voltage is the more common. I think nakasuway ng titatanan og low voltage. Isay bata dire pagabata na bugok na gidunggab ang sakit og tinidor. Isay kasuwatan na kanang murag mo ginagitawag no na curiosity kill the cat kung tinidor niya gidunggab og kuan. Isay kasuway na. Wala. Okay, very good. Isay kasuway ng kuan na open wire na nakupta nimo. Ang toaster. Oh, kana actually ang toaster kana no kanang toaster na murag mo ground yung mahikapan mo ana ditso no. Kasi kasuway sa science fair kana bitong murag anay sa science fair na sa una nay kanang murag experiment na imong hikapon ya ang ipabuhat ana mag-holding hands mo tanan ya nay usa na mukupot sa katong mo produce electrical current no nya mudaloy na tan wala pero kasuway kung butang tudo sa pampatay lamukas. Goods, yan. Uy, naabot ang akong anak, no? Sige, pagsaba-saba ha. Sige, say hi. No, say hi to them all and say goodbye. Hi. Okay, goodbye. Okay. So yan, no? So yes, no? So high voltage again. Mula pa sa ginagawa, it's very simple, it's very easy to remember. High voltage greater than 1,000, low voltage less than 1,000. So drills na ha, tell me if it's high or low voltage. 1, 2, ready, go. 200 volts, high or low? 200 volts, high or low? Hoy, 200 volts? Hindi nga ba ko 200,000? Inigis Christy. Nakontihan na ni si Christy, no? Kaya mula nakalimutan dito. Sige, 1,500. O, di ba? Late afternoon. Kuyaw ka og burns, Christy. Pagbantay diha. No, si Christy, kuyaw og burns. Kay late afternoon na. Okay, good. Easier math. So we have what we call the iceberg phenomenon. Now that was what the answer for the one kanina. Iceberg phenomenon occurs when, very commonly siya when you're struck by lightning. What happens when you're struck by lightning? Do you know what's the most conductive tissue in the body? Anyone know? What is the most conductive tissue in the body? Okay. Anyone know? Kung na maka-answer, +1 mo sa akong exam. Or mubutang di ko bonus sa akong exam. Sa kabuok. I will put 1 bonus question in my exam if someone can answer. No cheating. Ang manikas diya, gabaan, no? Magkalibanga sa iyang board exam. Heart, yate. No, pwede. There's a reason why people get heart attacks when they're electrocuted. Why? Wala. Okay, time is up. So the answer is the nerve. Right? Sabi na pa sa body ito mo conduct ng electrical impulses. Di ba ang nerve? The nerve on you guys. Hoy! Nerve, right? Di ba? It's the most conductive substance in the body or the tissue. Sakto? Am I correct or am I correct? Yes, I am correct. Yes! No, it is the nerves. Wala, and it is the most conductive. Don't worry, sir. Do you have a way for me to remember? Absolutely. May sekreto ako mamaya. No, tutulungan ko kayong lahat para hindi nyo talaga makalimutan. No, so again, iceberg phenomenon is when you're electrocuted. Okay, so the electrocution enters the skin. This is when you have what we call your entry and exit wound. Okay, so when you have an iceberg burn, you have what we call an entry and exit wound. What do you mean by entry and exit? One, there is an entry asa nisod ang electricity or ang thunder or thunder na yun, bugo. Ang lightning, nisod siya in one point and the exit siya the other. What happens in this phenomenon is this. Wala kayong makitaan sa gawas. The skin is going to look normal. Okay, the skin is going to look completely normal, but if you open up the tissue underneath, nahurot na nagkaluto ang panit sa sud. Why? Because the lightning look for the most conductive thing in your body, which are your nerves. So basically, iyan ang sundon. Sundon na niya tanan nerves. No, asa na padung yung nerves, diha na siya padung, iyan ang sundon. So basically, maluto inyong nerves, no, inside out. You're cooked inside out, no. Every part of the insides, no, of your muscles, your skin is going to be cooked. But sa gawas, wala kay makitaan. No, it's not going to be clear. That's what we call iceberg phenomenon. Again, it is only in electrical burns na kita kana. Again, only electrical burns. No other type of burns. No other type of burns has this type of phenomenon. So again, it's also the most common cause of amputation. Na naman, again, that's what I said. Ikakilat, entry, exit. Wala kakibaw, all of the tissue in your arms and your legs, burned na sila inside. Dili na masalvage. So, what the doctor does, putlo na lang nila. And it's also very common sa heart failure. Kaya ba, your heart has a lot of, unsa may daghan sa inyong heart. Kasakit, sir. Ayaw lang singali. Unsa may daghan sa heart? What keeps your heart beating? Dili po blood. What keeps your heart beating? Bilarente. What keeps your heart beating? No, it's not muscles. Hey! Oh yes, what produces conduction? Di ba, naaman tayo, sinoatrial node, ventricular atrial node. Di ba? The branches of his. Di ba, nakalimutan nyo, di ba? Dapat hindi nyo kalimutan yan. Siyang ina nyo, di ba? Those have a lot of electrical nervous tissue in your heart, di ba? So, asa man mo adto electricity, musud na sa inyong kasing-kasing. No, all that electricity will go inside your heart and you will die. No, so muna, very common ang heart attacks for people who get electrocuted. Kay, what man sa inyong heart? No, and the heart is very conductive. Kay, daghan kay siya, daghan kay siya og electrical impulses that happen around here. Kay, your heart actually does not use chemical transmitters. Di ba? Your heart, di ba? Your nervous system either uses chemical or electrical transmission, no? Transmission. No, so either chemicals or electrical. Usually the brain uses mostly chemical. Boy, nihilak na gyud. It's either the brain uses mostly chemical, the body, especially the heart and the muscles, usually use electrical transmission. So they use electrical impulses to produce an impulse, especially in the heart. So kung makilatan ka, takihon ka dito. So that's why kuya okay na siya. Even 200 volts can already cause a heart failure. No? So kuya, no? So bantay-bantay mo diyan. Next. So let's go to the BMS. Ano? Yes, hilat na po ni. Inom tagamay. No? Inom siya diha, no? Tea break. So basic medical sciences, no? So first off, skin is the largest organ of the body. Nay na sayo pa ni? Itong mga to. Unsa may nasakto ninyo? Si Bobby, to mo to. Bobby, unsa may naka-answer ka kasakto, Bobby? Did you get a correct answer number 1, Bobby? Yes! Okay, very good. The correct answer there si Bobby sa first question. No? Akong pangutan na, nasakto ba siya? Yung answer skin. Paminaw, Bobby! No? Paminaw, bitaw. So, the skin is the largest organ of the body. The largest internal organ is do you know what's the largest internal organ of the body? What's the largest internal organ of the body? Liver. Okay, good. Okay, so the skin comprises 15% of your total body weight. Imagine na. So if magpagamay ka, unsay sekreto, imore daw tangtangon yung skin. Now, sa functions, they have 4 functions. Number 1 is protection from external substances. No, so your skin basically acts like a wall. No, di pwede bisag unsa lang musud sa imong body. Next one is for sensation, one of the more important functions. No, you are able to feel, no, tactile sensations with your body. Thermoregulation. No, unfortunately, we are not dogs. We are not sheep. No, with a lot of fur. So we need our skin, the skin alone, to keep ourselves warm. Kung nakabantay mo na, do you notice that Caucasians, especially those living in Europe, in America are hairy. Diba? Kabantay mo sa mga afam, mga daghan kayo buhok. It's because it's an adaptation of the skin. No, because their places are colder, their skin adapted, no, na they had more hair in their body para medyo dili kayo bugnaw. Last one, vitamin D production. So vitamin D is produced using cholesterol, no? So it requires cholesterol to produce vitamin D. Next. So there are two layers of your skin. Now, first up, epidermis, the outermost, and next one is your dermis. Let's talk about your epidermis first. Again, it's the outermost layer of the skin. Now, what you see now on top of the skin of yours is already the epidermis. It's basically made up of epithelial tissue, or the most basic of the tissues. No? It's replaced every 28 to 30 days. So basically, you have new skin every 28 to 30 days. So maglibog ta na na yung mga tao na bagagnaong. Joke lang. Na dapat na replace ang skin every 20 to 30 days. Kaya mga baga face, mag-skin change pa na sila. Di natin ngayon, no? Kasi magtapok ka na ba? Kabaga lang na. Joke lang. Now, and it contains typically 5 layers. Now, these are the 5 layers. Corneum, granulosum, spinosum, basale. Diba? No. So, why is there one side with only 4 and one side with 5? Because lucidum, the second, depends on when you're looking. Some sources state germinativum or basale is the first one. Some say corneum. So I prefer to talk about the skin 1 to 5. No? Deepest to most superficial. Why? If you remember mga deepest to most superficial, you understand why the superficial is superficial and the deepest is the deepest. So the most superficial layer is your stratum corneum. It's called corneum because the tissue here looks like horns. Mga horns, dried up horns. Now, lucidum, it's called lucidum because it's clear. It's lucid. No, it's clear. It's absent sometimes. No, in a few parts of our body. This is the answer for one of them. No, this is basically it. No, na yung mga parts na sa atong lawas na naay lucidum, naay parts na wala. No, when you look at a microscope of the skin with lucidum, you'll notice a clear layer or very light layer, or a band of light tissue. Next one is granulosum, is granular. No? So daghan kay ni siya o granular tissue. Stratum spinosum is where you can see a lot of spiny protrusions. And lastly, stratum germinativum or the basal basale, no? Stratum germinativum or basale. Let's discuss them one by one. No? So this is an example, by the way, of a picture of our skin with what we call lucidum. This is corneum, the outermost layer. Next one is lucidum. Di ba, kabantay mo, medyo light siya na area of the skin. Di ba, kabantay mo, a lot of gaps and it's very light. Granulosum is where darker ang skin. So between the stratum corneum and granulosum, there's a light layer, a light band of tissue. And granulosum is where you see a lot of dark tissue because there's a lot of melanocytes here. Next one is stratum spinosum. It's called spinosum because it's very spiny. No, a lot of spines, a lot of twisting tissue. And lastly, basale. No, basale, I think it's the most clear. No, ang pinakasayong dumdumon when you look under the microscope is usually the corneum and basale. Basale because there are a lot of germinating, no, or growing cells here in this area. So let's discuss them one by one. Again, I like to discuss the deepest before I talk about the most superficial. So germinativum or basale is the innermost layer of the skin. This is where a lot of the skin is actually produced, or a lot of the keratin in the skin. Because a lot of our skin is basically made up of keratin. Keratin smooth. No, that's why a lot of your what we call hair products have a lot of keratin. Why? Because keratin makes your skin, not your skin, but your hair stronger. Because basically your hair is basically skin. No, if you think about it, if you're getting a haircut, you're actually getting skin cut off. No, your skin, your hair is basically, kung ato tanaw, it's basically like the horns on a cow. No, the horns on a cow are basically hair. Or in a hair in a leather form. So when you get a haircut, for guys, when we get a haircut, we're basically getting our skin cut off. Okay, if you think about it that way, medyo weird siya, pero it's actually true. No, so again, germinativum or basale is where a lot of your keratin is. No? So when you talk about keratin smooth, you talk about the basale or the germinativum. There's also a lot of melanocytes here. No? So this is responsible for skin pigmentation. So if you're very dark, blame your germinativum. No? So this adaptation, melanocytes are very important, no, to protect your skin from, especially dermis, from a lot of sunlight. So that's why, di ba, if you notice, if you're African, you're dark. No? It's not because you're from Africa. It's because of the temperature there in Africa. It's very hot there. That's why most people in Africa are dark skinned because of the amount of sunlight. That's why we, of course, also the Filipinos, the true Filipinos, the people living close to the equator, are very dark because it's hotter. We receive a lot more sunlight here, okay, and a lot stronger intensity sunlight. Lastly, this is where the layers are produced. What do you mean by that, sir? What do you mean by the layers are produced by basale? Imong yung skin, guys, more na siya elevator. Okay, your skin acts like an elevator. The youngest skin starts sa basale. When they get older, they move up. More siya moving up ceremony per me ba. When your skin grows, it starts at the bottommost layer, goes up, up until maabot siya sa corneum and mo fall off siya. No, quick trivia, all of the dust in your room, no, kabantay mo na, nanong mini akong kwarto, wala may tao, wala may, wala hugaw sa duol, no, dili kay ka, no, limpyo man usually, wala kay tao magsud gawas, layo ka sa road, pero makabantay ka, na tagadlaw na ginay layer of dust that forms in your room. Kabantay mo na, guys. No, di ba? Especially kanami daw nag-live og dorm. Kabantay mo na wala man ta mo gibuhat, wala man ta mo gada og basura or anything, pero nagiabog ang inyong room. That's actually your skin. So do not blame before man yun. That's why this is one theory. That's why there was a theory before. Have you heard of the theory that living beings came from non-living things? So there was a theory before that human beings, that's why human beings came from rocks, or animals came from rocks. That's why you just cut open a rock daw, magawas na ng tao, because before we did not understand the process of evolution, the process of growth, of development. There's even a postulate theory by, I believe, Plato ba to siya? I forgot who the theory was, na flies came from rotting meat. Na naman, why was this theory made? Kay the philosopher, I believe si Plato, I forgot who it was. Ni postulate siya na gikan ni ang flies from rotting meat, kay every time you leave rotting meat daw out for a week, may buong ka, or a week or two, may buong ka, na yung mga flies mo gawas sa meat. So, ang yung pagsabot ato na time na, hala, yawa, no? So, gikan di ay sa rotting meat ang flies. So, if di lang ta mag-rot og meat, walay flies. Mutuo mo na, of course not. The real reason why that's there is because we all know, di ba, na if naka-leave na food outside for a long time, there's going to be a fly that will land on it, that will lay their eggs, and the eggs will turn into larvae or maggots that will eat the meat and eventually become a flies in 1 or 2 weeks. No? So there's always a reason for everything. Asam ko nabot, sir? Nabot na ko sa akin eh. Basale again, which will produce the higher parts of the skin. So again, basale, elevate siya, mahimo siya og stratum spinosum. So basically, all of the 5 layers of your skin are from basale. Okay, again, all of the 5 layers of the skin are actually from the basale. Gikan basale, mahimong spinosum, mahimong granuloso, mahimong lucido, mahimong siya corneum man babay. It will flake off. That's actually the development of your skin or your epidermis. Next one is your stratum spinosum. Why is it called spinosum? Because it has spiny projections. Not spiny projections. This is what it looks like. Kapag mo na si germinativum, very circular or cube-like ang tissue. When you get to stratum spinosum, medyo spiny na siya or very sharp. Right? Makita niyo ang difference. So as you can see here, very circular, or developing or cuboidal in shape. But when you get to spinosum, medyo elongated na siya and spiny looking. That's why it's called spinosum. So these are layers of progressively thickening layers of keratinization. So daghan na kayo keratin. The more, there's actually no more keratin aggregates, the higher you go. No, so keratinocytes specialize in what we call phagocytosis. No? Yeah. Phagocytosis, it eats up, right? It eats up the tissue. Why do you need a lot of keratinocytes within this area? Okay, it needs to eat up all of those bacteria, all of those outside substances that try to get in your body. Kanuna niya tanan para way makalusot na bacteria or virus. That's why usually, di ba, if you have PPEs, usually yung sa may tabunan na, the most important parts tabunan. Ang baba, ang ilong, no, ang ear sometimes, and the eyes. Why? Because they are openings on your skin. You technically need to cover your skin a lot. Why? Because your skin is has a system of protection, which is what we call, again, the keratinocytes. And lastly, a lot of melanin granules are present here. Di ba? There are a lot of melanocytes in your granulosum. In your germinativum, mukuyog na siya. Instead of melanocytes, ang mahitla po na mahimo na siya melanin granules as it goes up. Next one, granulosum. Granulosum, the most important function of granulosum is water retention. Again, stratum granulosum, the most important function is granulosum. It has a lot of what we call keratin granules and melanin granules. This is what we call keratohyalin. The type of tissue or the type of cells that has a lot of keratins or large keratin granules are called keratohyalin tissue. So this is responsible for keeping water out. That's why when you go to the sea, salt water, dili mo mubutod like fish. Diba? You remember before in your bio, diba? You're not supposed to put fish, saltwater fish in fresh water and vice versa. You're not supposed to put freshwater fish and saltwater fish. In saltwater, why? Mubutod mo ng cells and it will explode. For your human beings, that does not happen. We do not care if we are in salt or fresh water because what we have what we call this layer of stratum granulosum. And of course, we are not we don't absorb water like fish, no, because we don't really have any salt water in our bodies. No? Lastly, the cells in this area become flat. If kumante mo, very cuboidal and circular pa ang nasa germinativum or basale. When you go up, may mo siya spiny. If you go up another level, it will now become flat. No, they look very flat and they no longer have a nucleus. Kumante mo, the nucleus, of course, is the very dark part of the cell in the middle. That's your nucleus. Break that. No, that's the nucleus. When you get to the granulosum and above, kabantay mo, when you get to granulosum, lucidum, and your corneum, wala na yung nucleus. Why? Because these cells do no longer do anything. Okay, what do you mean by no longer do anything, sir? Wala na sila physiological functions. They don't split, no, they don't divide, they don't do anything. No, they're basically just layers of tissue that's going to eventually die. That is the purpose now of your skin at this stage. No, it's basically for protection or flaking off. Next, lucidum. So again, lucidum, it's clear or transparent. That's why it's called lucid, right? It's absent in most part of the skin except for your palms and the soles. So when you look at your palms, medyo baga siya, especially the soles of your feet. Very thick siya. They have lucidum in them, stratum lucidum. Sir, does your face have lucidum? Guys, do you think your face has lucidum? Does the skin on your face have stratum lucidum? Give me a yes or no. Anyone know if na lucidum in your face? Give me a yes or no. Sir, yes, na lucidum on face. Oh, no. Actually, naa sa mga bagag na ang lang. No. Ay, yes, ana si Donna. Baga dinig na akong si Donna. Baga na akong si Donna. No, okay. Ni early out. Ni early out ka, Donna? Kalbaans Donna, no, nakasugat ni Sir Daryl sa Park Mall. Ito, wala ka. No, so again, no, it's only found in your thick skin. Okay? Thick skin. What do you mean by thick skin? The skin on your palms and the skin on your feet. Why are the skin on your palms and the skin on your feet very thick? Number one, because they are usually the parts of the body that are always in contact with something. Right? Diba your feet are always in contact with the ground or with your socks and your shoes and your slippers. That's why baga na siya. Sa inyong palms, of course, you use it for grasping objects, manipulation. That's why they're thick because they're always holding on to something, no? So kanang mga bagga kig mga skin diha buhi na mo gamay. Move on na. 'Di ba, Claire? 'Di ba? Move on na. Nakalimutan ka. No, so protects areas that are commonly injured or again very commonly in contact with objects. Okay? If you're usually holding on to something or stepping on the ground, bagagin na siya. It's also true, right? Diba? Before, when slippers were not invented, muna baga na itong feet because we used to walk barefooted. No? So, baga po ng skin na to sa atin. Ni, na-mute ko. Asa ko lapitan na mute? Asa mo lapitan na mute? Baga sa TL. Okay, ito, chika-chika, itong uban. Kisay ko intern ni Donna Jane. No? Bantayin niyo si Donna Jane, ha? Basig mo episode ni Kalit. Joke lang. Ako na itugan. Kisa kayo yung CI, si Miss Pau. Miss Pau, TTH. Sa MWF, kinsaman. Good girl. Of course, good girl. Bitaw kasi yung MWF. Reach mo, di ba? Miss Dayan. Nelias. Sus, ang mga lagyo kay mga padulingans kinabuhi. Bitaw. Next, stratum corneum, the last layer and the topmost layer, the most superficial layer. So again, as I said, patay na ni tanan when you get to stratum corneum. Muna, kabatay mo sa una. Di ba, who used to do this before? Mukuha og kanang pin, kanang kung ano pin niya, kanang bitaw ang ipaslak sa kamot. Ya, kasi mo ta pagbata, kanang bitaw na ipin, niya idunggab niya sa panit. Ay, di ba? Di ba? Nano di sakit. Di ba? Wala mo na kuha na, di sakit. Sige, dunggab ba? Kadugay, mapaksit ng panit, sakit, nagsugod, agay. That's actually corneal tissue, guys. Stratum corneum na siya. Wala na living tissue there. So, di na mo ma-stress. No, corneum na siya. Muna di siya magsakit. Diba? That's actually stratum corneum. So, if na bata, magdunggab-dunggab diha. May yung I'm Superman. No, I can't feel anything. Stupid child. That's the stratum corneum. That's the stratum corneum. Okay, ma-feel kayo. It's all dead. They're all dead tissue naman. So usually, kiniya itong stratum corneum, mawa na niya siya every 45 to 75 days. Matangtang na siya tanan diha. Again, muna nanodaghan o gabog sa imong kwarto. Dili na tungod sa, may uban, may na, kasi tawag na kanang, tungod na sa abog sa gawas. Si abog sa gawas. Nagpuyo kag apartment, asa man dapitang abog. Asa may muabog, it does not actually aggregate tungod na sa mga tao sa palibot, dagang nagagiagi, or tungod nimo, labi na kanang ikauli, no? Yan, naiuban, kanang bilang, bagnos, kanalis kamot, bagnos pa dayon. Ito yan na, ikaw ulis balay, no? Wala na, yan na, ulis kamot. Pahid din. Tapos nakita niya na during ka ng online class ba niya. First year to siya siya na ana din. Sas, hoy, amo pag niya na yan mas class ya, baka pakunta mo. Sige, lumiis ka na ana ba? Ana is kamot kaluod. Ay mga girls ha, kalain na nay no na. Nakoy ko ano, nakoy funny kay na story before no ya. Asa na nakoy crush sa high school before siya katawa. Ako kuan gigo kanang klasiko na laki man na di bitaw kay mutanaw sa looks nya kiat pag yung kayo dito ko na more grade 6 ko ato nya ingon na bugok kay akong crush no og yang friend kay kuan to nagsuwat-suwat sila sa notebook nako wa sila kabante na akong notebook ang ilang gisuwatan so nibong ko na usa man na may suwat akong notebook na naglibak diyang duha nako so sumugit na wag yung crush niya dito kay giyatagan na ko siya kuan sa muka grade 6 papunta to puti ko buoto yagit pakikwato natiog ko dito no kay nag-stress yung best friend na bayot na usa ni kay giyatagan na siya og ring kuya kay ko no kita ka na og ring ang crush pag grade 6 ito pag grade 6 ya gisugsug siya sa iyang friend kay nag-meeting time ato niya para di sa mga story nagsuwat sila sa friend nano gihatagan kag ring niya ambot friend siya asa man yang ring ang gisuwat niya nasa iyang liog yawa. Nasakitan ko ng very very light nawa akong gana ng very very light so sugat na to manglugod na si Sir Joke lang kaya kabawa to di ba kita sa una itong bata-bata pa ta kaya di pa kita murag aware sa atong self so kita ipaki sa atong isulob o kita ipaki sa atong buhok o kita ipaki sa atong grooming no. So di ba muna ikatanaw na to pag high school no ikalingi ato sa picture ni Donna kay no kuya pakigbuhok no kasi nakaagi na ng stage kanang bilong imo-imo kananas buhok grabe ka ng taas yung yung bangs ba niya more like you correct kasi nakasaway na stage sa kakamot or sa katiil. No, di ba nakasaway tayo ang sig paminahon kay second hand serenade ano sa second hand serenade ba sakto FM Static ba sa kalimot naman ko niguwang nagiwala no ang boy ba fall for you FM Static Boys Like Girls no ya moy maoy na yon gitar yung book yan so nadyo nga friend na before guys no nagrabe lalaki pag yun niya uso pa man ng gel kabot pa man ng gel kanang tag 5 on na gel niya kanang grabe na yung kaspa pero sige po gagamit niya ang buhok kanang ipatusok-tusok or kabot mo na time or basic tiguang nga si sir bro nakita na sa una mo grade 4 grade 5 nakusuki na so kaming mga laki kulot magbuhok si sir so ngilo kay ko tanawon kana bilang dakoy picture kita kong picture before may event man dito niya kanang gel ba niya gibutang-butang sa buhok niya kulot may buhok so instead na payas sa uban na guys okay directly do tanag yung kanang gel yun ba like color green, color orange na gel ba butang sa buhok ikaligo after ligo basta ni mong buhok butangan ni mo kanang gel sachet na siya butang sus ngiluha gid guys ang uban ang ayan di ko ingog ang ayan kay yagit mo gid na pero may lang kanang talinis man tanang ng buhok ba mer kita man kang Sir Brian before di ba si Sir Brian kay medyo spiky mag-hair. Kita yung picture ng Sir Brian before si katawa ka na yagit pa kay ba niya. Kasi yung buhok. Ang kainis kayo. So ako ang isugsog kaya sa una kay si Urchin kay tusok-tusok man. May na siya si Urchin katanaw mo sa buhok. Sus, kulot dito niya. Mugaha. Sa mukha nangunay na Sagot na nga na Erica. Bitaw. Akulot kay ang buhok laina gid to. Pero yes no asa na about so cordium guys so kana dead keratinocytes ala daw ka. Sa mukha. So kana no yeah so asa ta keratinocytes get off no they will basically get off from the body after 45 to 75 days. So muna abugon gyud na yung room guys wag mo mahimo kay tungod po na nimo. No so this substance no this corneum actually acts as a barrier to water. No, that's why usually no kitang mga human beings bisag mawanan ta usually dili man na mukunot dito atong panit or we're not like paper ba na when you di ba when you put water in paper it actually soaks up the water and it gets wet. The skin is not like that of course. No, of course not easily. Diba kadugay mo kunot man po na we can't really do much about it. Pero on a normal human being, di ka na murag mo kunot dito ang panit because we have this protective layer called our stratum corneum. It's very important for waterproofing. So, waterproofing si corneum, si granulosum, water retention. What do you mean by water retention? Walay mo gawas pud na tubig. Again, muna your fish dies because sa isda man gyud mo gawas ang tubig wala sila stratum germinativum. Not germinativum, but ito ba? Yeah, granulosum, I mean, no? Wala sa stratum granulosum muna when you move from fresh to salt water, magawas ang water from their cells. In the body of a human being, that doesn't happen that way, no? It doesn't technically happen. So, but we do, muna aside na yung mga osmosis when you stay in water for too long, okay? Though, dili grabe ang water movement na gyapon gamay. Muna mo after nyo kaligo or swimming pool or ligo dagat kay mangunot inyong skin. There's actually a bit of osmosis going on in that scenario, pero again, we don't die because of that, not like fish. Okay. So this is the first layer. Unsay tawag ani? Anong tawag niyan? What do you call that layer? No, write the name of the layer. Ala, patay, nakalimot na din. So, hey, kasayo na. No, chat. So, yes. Corneum. Okay. Next, what do you call this layer? This layer here, medyo cuboidal pa. Dagko pa kayo og mga nucleus. What do you call that layer? Saan na siya? It's not corneum, of course. It's going to be something else. What do you call this layer? In number 2. Dapat tayo, hoy, paspas dapat, hoy! Hoy, sino sidom? Sino sidom, hoy? Kalalom, mana, di na lusidom. Di mo na, yes, basale, hoy, pinakalalom, di ba, nagstoy yata ganiha? Diba, that's basale, next. Kana, o, kanang baga, medyo dark na layer. Dark na layer, medyo baga. Yes, granulosum na siya. How about this? Kanang medyo elongated na, very spiny. Anong tawag nyo dyan? What do you call that layer? Yes, pilosum. Last, that light band. Medyo light siya, no, clear. Sir, ano, di ba siya clear? Sure. Di ba, more pink siya? Of course, kigituan man nag-pink na pigment. Ang pinaka-clear na layer mo, pwede pinaka-pink, of course, no, if you think about it. Sige, okay, good, okay. So there's what we call a retipeg region. No, retipeg. Retipeg? Does anyone know the correct pronunciation of this? Ang maka-correctly pronounce ani kay again mo hatag og bonus na question. Dapat i-on ang mic nya sakto gyud litok. Yeah. Dapat iyon ng mic ha nyo, ibasa ang kuan. Sige, manawag ko. Ato taon if na makakuan. If na makasakto, bonus na ko bonus akong exam. Sige, manawag ta sa akong intern. Sanders, how do you pronounce this region? Agbong si Sanders kay wala na minaw. How do you pronounce it?
Slow kayo mo on ako, Mike, sir. Sorry.
Asa ta?
I'm not sure, sir. And then I'm not sure, sir, na nagbiyahe pa si Toyin, sir.
Ikaw wala kang biyahe. So, litok. It's okay. Again, it's okay to make mistakes. What do you think? Wait, wow. Wow, man. Wala. Sige, makita taglayan. Sige, Villaruel. Adrian, sa paglito ka na, Villaruel.
Sir.
Again, ay plus, ay bonus. How do you enunciate this region?
Sir, nakita na ako sa imong PPT, sir.
Sa paglito ka na. Pwede na way Google.
Read.
Asa ta? Ay, nilililis handout, ikasan. Okay. Okay. Why bonus? Nilililis handout. Dito. It's pronounced Retipeg. Kuya, ano? Retipeg. No, it's called Retipeg because it contains, joke ba? Sige, namoy bonus. Usa. Very good. Nagbasa si Villaruel sa handout. No? So, it's actually pronounced Retipeg. Tangina yan. Retipeg. Because it contains what we call Reti Regis. What is the Retipeg region? It actually contains what we call, again, Reti. No, it actually contains a Reti. What is Reti? It's a network of fibers and nerves or blood vessels that connect the epidermis to your dermis. Okay, or the other way around, I mean. It connects the dermis to the epidermis. So that region in between the epidermis and the dermis is actually called the Retipeg region. No, so it actually attaches the epidermis to the dermis, or basically not really it's other way around kasi dermis man ang nag-connect nila duha. Next. So it's actually composed of ridges and valleys because it provides more surface area. The more ridges, the more valleys there are, the more surface area there is for the epidermis to cling to. So next one is the dermis. So the dermis is otherwise known as the corium or the true skin. So the epidermis is actually not the true skin, guys. It's going to be the dermis, the innermost layer. It's 20 to 30 times thicker than the epidermis. Mas baga siya. And it contains most of the receptors. Not all, but most. What are its three primary functions? Sensation, regeneration, and vascularization. So meaning, again, it contains most of the receptors of the skin, the nerve endings. It contains most of the regenerating cells, and it contains most of the blood vessels. Kasuway mo na murag na slice yung skin pero wala siya gadugo. Isa kasuway na like na paper cut or kana na slice ni mo gamay mong panit, especially in the palm or the digits, pero wala siya nagdugo. Isa kasuway na. Ay kasuway na. Sir gibiyahe po. Wala yung kasuway na. Ako kasuway ko na. No, kanami daw na slice akong panit kay kanami daw nagbinugo, kanami daw ng limpyo ko sa knife niya. Akong gi-clean ang sharp na side niya. Kung kabantay ni lusot na di ay ang sharp na side sa sponge. So, yun, no, nasamad ko pero wala siya gadugo. Why? I think ang epidermis ra ang naigo ato. Dili na ang dermis. Okay. Next slide. The dermis contains two layers. The superficial papillary layer and the deep reticular layer. So, it's the deep reticular layer anchors your hypodermis to your dermis to the hypodermis. The hypodermis is not part of the skin. Okay? Some books magiging na 3 layers on skin. Actually, the hypodermis is not part of the skin anymore. It's actually more taken to a different layer or a different tissue completely. Hindi siya technically part of the skin. Okay? So what are the receptors of the body? We have several. Free nerve endings are the most multiple. Muna sila pinakadaghan. Usually located in the epidermis. That's why I told you na they're not exact. Not all of the receptors are found in your dermis. Some of them are found in the epidermis. Now, the free nerve endings are for pain and itch. If mangatol ka, blame your epidermis and your free nerve endings. Your free nerve ending in the dermis, that's why there is an S and the D, is found in the dermis. That's why it's called free nerve ending S and free nerve ending D. Because there are still going to be free nerve endings in the dermis. Si dermis lang na free nerve ending, wala na itch, only pain. Merkel's disc is next. It's found in your epidermis, specifically in your stratum spinosum. It's responsible for light touch and superficial pain. That's why naa siya sa epidermis, because it's for light touch. Very light, no stroking. It needs to be in the epidermis, the outermost layer of the skin, and not in the deepest layer. Kaya naman, so ang pagpamatay ni mo, if very light ang touch, very light caress, if it's going to be deeper in the dermis. Next one, the Meissner's corpuscles is for your 2-point discrimination. Nakoy plan B para ni Meissner's corpuscles to remember this. There are 2 S's in your Meissner. So therefore, 2-point discrimination. Para dili mo kalimot. Again, Meissner's 2S, 2-point discrimination. Next, Ruffini's corpuscles, di ba? If you remember, gidiscussan mo, Sir Poy, gidiscuss niyo ani. Na plan B ni Ruffini. Rufinate. Why? Because it's for worms. Rufinate. Si Kraus is for cold. Na naman, Santa Claus. Okay, that's why it's for cold. Do you have these plan B's? Natudloan man eh. Kining plan B's for this. Rufinate o Santa Claus. Karon pa mo na plan B's or natudloan na mo? Kasadif. Karon pa mo natudloan. Okay na nubag. So karon pa? Santa Claus. Yeah, okay, good. At least na si Santa Claus. Si Rufinate, worms. Again, Rufinate o si Santa Claus. Okay? Take note na si Rufinate and Santa Claus are also pain receptors. Why? Sir, nano pain receptors sad si Rufinate ug si Santa Claus. Kay any extreme of heat and cold will cause pain. Right? 'Di ba? Kung init king butang masakitan ka. 'Di ba guys? 'Di ba? Muna dili kay mo muhikap og init na butang. So dili ta mo hikap ni Bobby. Di ba Bobby? Are you hot, Bobby? Wala naminaw si Babe. Yes! Yes! Oh, good. Bitaw. That's why, di ba, we actually perceive extreme heat as pain because our Ruffini and extreme cold as painful because Ruffini and Krauss are actually pain receptors. Kamantay mo, di ba? Even cold, di ba kamantay mo na, di kayo, sakit ang magsigig kupot o bugnaw kayo na ice kasi nakasuway na ka, nagisugo o daghan kayo na ice. Yung walay plastic, so more kag buang, kupot kag duha ka bugnaw kay na ice gikan sa tindahan padung sa inyuha. Kasi nakasuway na. Di ba? Di ba? Mupilit pag sakit kaysa sa kamot actually because your Krauss and your Rufinate are actually pain receptors as well. Any extremes of the warmth or cold will actually cause pain. Okay? So again, pain receptors is that. Next, Pacinian corpuscle is for pressure and vibration. Do you know the plan B for this one? Sayo nyo kayong plan B for this one. Pasinyan. So, pressure and vibration, pasinyan. No, so, sensya na sa mga plan B. So, again, pasinyan. No, free nerve endings is for pain. Mercus, this is for light touch and superficial pain. Meissner's, 2S, so 2-point discrimination. Rufinate, Santa Cruz, and pasinyan. Okay? So let's do a short drill at tatawag kung kainomdom pa ba mo. Tell me what nerve ending or receptor am I describing? Warmth. Charo. Warmth. Yes. No good. No. Cold. Oh, Charo. Cold. Hoy, wrong spelling, Nibal. Dili Ruffini. Ruffini. No, good. 2-point discrimination. No naman yung geography. Good. 2-point discrimination. Sige. Pressure and vibration. Pressure and vibration. All right. Okay, good. Wala, perfect exam. Okay, good. Sige. So these are the receptors. No? Meissner's corpuscles are for touch. Right? Touch, basically. Kini sila tanan, guys. Touch mo gini sila. I need to get that out. Actually, para po ni sa touch sila tanan. No, touch gini sila tanan. All nerve endings can feel touch. No, pero some of them are more specialized than others. So, Meissner's, si Pacinian, Rufinate, root hair plexus is actually just a complex free nerve ending. No, Cross and Bob, Santa Claus. Merkel's disc, no, and lastly, free nerve endings. Okay, good. Next, hypodermis, again, not considered part of the skin. So, si dermis again, si epidermis. But it is a layer that we need to talk about because it's important for shock absorption and insulation. So, it contains a lot of subcutaneous fat. What do you mean by subcutaneous? Sub meaning underneath, cutaneous meaning the skin. So subcutaneous fat. There's a lot of fat in this layer. No? It's very important because it actually helps in what do you mean by shock absorption? So kung masukmagan ka, medyo di kayo sakit. No? If muna yung not sa panginsulto, but if you're fatter, no, you don't get hotter. You don't get cold that much. So that's why, di ba, sa una, if you remember, kayo naman sa una, na more commercials about kanang bitaw, musud ka o kanang, ay, kalimut ko si pangana, basta kanang bitaw, ang ulo ra ang mugawas niya. Merag sauna, kita mo sa una, kanang bitaw channel, na kanang home something, kanang bitaw magbaligya o mga stuff niya. Magbaligya siya. Lingaw, gigo to sa una, kay, kung mama, hapit mo palit ato. Ang buhato na kay ang tao musod yan. Basta na siya tent ba? Pero tent siya para sa lawas. Way labot imong naon niya. Na yung heater niya. Sington kag maayo. Makapayat man daw siya. Abot kung mo gana ba gito? Eh, kuya mo daw sington kag maayo niya. Murag mini sauna ba? Abot kung kakita mo. I think tiguwang na gito si sir. No? Kadugay ni di na ka-relate ang mga students na ko. So this is what I meant. Not tight tissue conductivity, guys. Some tissue is less conductive than the rest and vice versa. So bone is the least conductive. Next is cartilage. Next is tendon. Next is ligament. Next is muscle. Next is blood vessel. And next is nerve. Daghan? Daghan, no? Do you want a way to remember it? Gusto nyo ba ng way to remember all this? Or natudloan na ba mo ano eh? Do you know the plan B for this one so you can remember it? Ako may nag-discuss yung burns. Wala makabaw sa plan B ano eh. Okay. So, sorry for this. Kung na yung mga parents diya, again, I'm Sir Brian Anthony Pasacol. I'm not Sir Darla Mars. Medyo bastos lang siya. Pero okay medyo bastos. Di ba? Mas mga man daw tayo if medyo bastos. Di ba na ka na, no? Kung green ang joke ba, mas may inumduman mo kaysa sa kanang mga joke-loke lang sa kilid. Anad na mo. Dahil ginisdibal, no? Bitaw. Nay, plan B, anin, yung monex niya. Be careful to lick my black nipple. Be careful to lick my black nipple. O, ayun. So, dumdum na, no? Bone, B. Cartilage, careful. Tendon, ligament, muscle, blood, vessels, nerves. So, again, be careful to lick my black nipple. So, again, my name is Sir Brian Anthony Pasaol. I am from Liloan. I'm from Yate, Liloan. Yatap siguro no. Babalita na ko sunod ugma. Nga chairman si Dio gi-report sa Bombo Radio kay nagbinasto sa iyang leksyon. Maloor mo Sir Daniel. Okay ka. Nakatabang. Wala na nanubag na kunog eh. Hinahina nagtawag ang ni si hinahina nagtawag no. Hello? ABS-CBN. Ito. So kato no, nahan ninyo. Pwede may relation si Black Nipple, nahan ninyo. Pwede po na, ano sila no? Black nigga. Ako na Black nigga. Listen na po na. Samot na po na. Next, patopisyo. Hala ko pata na human. Okay, malapas na gamay guys. Carry bells ang ba? Malapas sa mga 10-15 minutes. Kaya ba? O di mo musugot? Ang sa ni Sir Nice. Mantanig ni Bal. Mandar gigan ako sa kadim ni Bal. Patay gigan ako bitaw joke. Okay, lapas na mga 10-15 minutes. Kaya pa? Okay, pagkapoy na. I can stop now if you want. It's not as ending pero medyo what slide am I? Yeah. Carry langs, no? So, if you're tired na, you can go. I won't stop you. But to those who wish to continue lang, I will continue, no? So, up to you na guys. I won't force you to stay. Pero if you want to listen, padayon, you can always stay raman. Kung gini siya, as I said mo yun, na medyo makuan ko sa kanab itong 6 mag-start. Supposedly, 5:30 start na kay taas man gid na taas niya. Sayangan ko ba kay di na ko matudlo tanan if magdali ko. So again, if you're tired na, I won't force you. You can leave na. Enjoy your evening. But to those who want to continue listening, you can stay. Okay? Okay ha. Basta ni disclaimer na ko ha basig makadungog libo ko hala, chairman si Dio gibalita kay nireklamo mo estudyante dugi yung mas klase. Ningon ako ha, you can go. You can go. But to those who want to listen, you may stay. Okay? So again, patofisio, this is the part that's usually masayo pa yung mataw. When you talk about patofisio, this is the reaction of the body that leads to the disease. So there are two responses of the body that can lead to a burn. The first one is the local response. So a local response is what we call the effect on the skin itself. Kasi may tabo sa skin, the area of the skin. This is what we call the Jackson's model. It explains what happens to the area that is burned. So supposedly in Jackson's model, there are 3 zones. The innermost zone is the zone of coagulation. The second zone is the zone of stasis. And lastly, the zone of hyperemia. So let's describe each of them. The zone of coagulation is the innermost zone. This is usually the blackest zone. In the picture, the innermost zone is the zone of coagulation. Kanang itom na jud kayo. Kung sa kuan pa lang, sa sugba pa lang, muna gini pinakaitom na part na char na gyud. Muna pinakalami. Sakto guys, di ba? Muna pinakalami kanon kanang itom-itom gamay. Kasi mo agree. Actually guys, ay mo palabi ani kay carcinogenic na ha. Muna medyo you should cut down on barbecue. Okay, the black parts are proven to be carcinogenic. Muna ako din na kay ko mag-barbecue kay ako siya actually cancer. So dito palabi. No, so this is what we call the point of maximum damage. Grabe yun, no? Like luto. There are no living cells here. Okay? There are no living cells here. Patay tanan. This is the zone of irreversible damage. Irreversible tissue loss, otherwise known as coagulation. Skin that's died, namatay na gyud, completely burnt, it's called coagulant na siya. Na guba na gyud. Pertaining yung damage niya. Second zone is the zone of stasis. It's in between the innermost and the outermost zone. The zone of stasis is where a bit of the tissue has died, but not all of it. So salvageable pa siya. There is what we call decreased tissue perfusion. What do you mean by tissue perfusion? The tissue is the living tissue is trying to get into the dying ones. Iyata ilisan. That's what we call tissue perfusion. And there is less also blood vascularization. So when you say tissue perfusion, patay ang cells, but there is a bit pa of vascularization happening. There's still a bit of blood happening. And the blood is trying to get into the dead cells. Unfortunately, dili. That's why the zone of stasis is a bit red. Okay, again, there's a lot of blood accumulation around here. Okay, it's trying to get into those dead cells, but it can't naman. So it is increase on tissue perfusion and prevent damage is what we usually do as what we call management of this area. So if you're an OT, nya kabantay ka na, uy, zone of stasis ni siya, medyo puwa-puwa, this is where you try to do your what we call PAMS, to increase ka o circulation to this area. You try to do your best na there's regeneration, and you try your best to do that, prevent damage at all times. This is the intervention portion, not the medical portion. Lastly, zone of hyperemia. This is the area where there is increased tissue perfusion. This is the most red layer. A lot of blood is accumulating at this point, and this is the point wherein the tissue will recover. Na-damage siya, but it will recover very soon. Klaro na gid ni na mo recover in area compared to that of your zone of stasis 50-50 ni siya. Dead on arrival, zone of stasis 50-50, si zone of hyperemia, carry bells. Mabuhi gini siya. No issue. So what are the mechanisms of injury? This is what you discuss when you say pathophysio gyud. Unsay mahitabo sa panit when it gets into contact with this type of etiological factor. Thermal, when you get thermal burns, the heat actually cooks the skin. From when you get hot water poured over you, it's actually cooking the skin. What happens, guys? This is where you need to listen. Ikareva ninyo. If you tell this to your panel, I assure you, dako kag score sa imong pathophysio. So listen carefully. What happens when you get a burn? When you get a burn, guys, your cells actually disintegrate. What do you mean by disintegrate? Mubuto na sila and they fall apart. Why? Because your cells have what we call cell membranes, right? You have cell membranes. When you put very hot material on your cells, mubuto na ang cell membranes, and all of the tissue, all of the carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, everything that is the cellular makeup of your cell, they disintegrate, they fall apart. Why? Because chemically, in your chemistry, heat causes breakdown. Diba, you remember your chemistry days na namoy mga chemicals na initon, they actually turn into different substances. Right? Do you remember that before in your chemistry? Namina mo sa inyong chemistry. Diba, heat is a catalyst for chemical change. Chemical change, okay? So again, heat is a catalyst for chemical change. It actually causes your chemistry, the body chemistry, your cell chemistry to fall apart. So instead of, let's say, usually your cells are made up of these four things: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. These are the basic building blocks of your body. You're mostly made up of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. When there is heat applied to these four substances or elements, mabungkag na sila. So when you apply enough heat to the skin, like all other chemicals or all other elements will break down na sila, they turn back into their basic elements. That is why, kabantay mo, muitom ang panit kung maluto. Kabantay mo na mo darken ang, let's say, nagluto kag baboy. Di ba muitom ang baboy? That black substance is carbon. Now, when you get a burn, muitom yung skin because it turns into carbon. The oxygen is released from the carbon, the hydrogen is released from the hydrogen, and then from your carbon, and the nitrogen is released. So, ang mabili na lang, carbon na lang. Ingni yung panel na, musiga nilang mata. Muingon na sila, oh shit. Masa ka kuyas na niya sa mid part? I assure you guys, that's how I discussed my burns to my panel. Wala siya na-ask, nalisod, pag-abot sa side question. Madlock dito mo ask. Dito guys, no? Tell them that. Inga sila, sure, if we go back to the chemical makeup of the body, we are made up of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. So when you are using heat as a catalyst, no, you are heating up your skin, it actually causes the release of the other 4 elements of hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. What is left is carbon. No, that's why you have charred skin. It's carbon. Kuha ba? Did you learn something? Kuha? Ay, kuha? Kuha or libog? Well, surplus time. Okay, because of the heat causes, basically heat is a catalyst. Do you know what a catalyst is? Diba? A catalyst is a substance that speeds up a chemical reaction. A catalyst is a substance that hastens or speeds up a chemical reaction, or initiates a chemical reaction. Okay? So in this scenario, the heat is the catalyst. Ni-cause siya sa imuhang chon to become kahon. Nawagtang si hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, nabili na lang carbon. Naluto man mo ba, no? It fell apart, no? The chemical makeup of your body split. Nabili na lang si carbon. That's why maitim. If I remember before, if you burn, naman siya experiment. Muna guys, na maminaw to dapat sa chemistry, sa Gen Physio. Kay though basics sila, the basics are the building blocks for the more difficult to understand concepts. Okay, so puhon, I hope you learn this. Muna ako before this, sa panginambog, dagko ko og anaphysio-kines kay but I enjoyed the basics. I enjoyed my chemistry, I enjoyed my physics, I enjoyed my Gen Physio. So pag-abot na ko sa Reva, medyo nakainumdum pa man ko sa basics. So if na ko'y malimtan, I go back to my basics. Bitaw nung sa'yo makakosa ni, bitaw na namdin na. So kana, it actually helps you out. So again, see, no, carbon splits from your hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. Mana kamantay mo ko sa una, di ba? Basta na-experiment na that you burn something, you get the burnt parts, the black parts, yung may sagol sa something else, yung may sagol of another substance na mo ingon if nabay carbon ng kana na substance. Usually, the reaction leads to a positive niyan. Nagili siya carbon, so on. So, if you remember that, no, before. So, because of the heat, it caused the skin to burn. Or if you want to be more anaphysio, not chemistry, you can just say that because of the heat, it caused the cell membrane, the lipid membrane, the covering of the cells to fall apart and cause the innards, or the internal structure of the cell to disintegrate, nabungkag siya. That's why all of the insides of the cell fall apart. What will happen guys, if maguba ginang usa ka cell, yung mayabo na tanan ng iyahang innards. Di ba naman na yung mga organelles ng imong cells? Do you guys still remember the stomach of the cell? Hello? Hello? Buhay pa ba kayo? Ako na may buhay din. Nag-8 to 5 buta ko, no? Pagduka mo. Hoy, what is the stomach of the cell? The one that contains the digestive enzymes. Sige, na naman mo yung 1 bonus. Pasakto mo na. Golgi na lysosomes! Diba? Lysosomes of lysosomes. Ay, sa nucleus. Diba? Lysosomes and peroxisomes. Or peroxisomes na siya. Sorry. Peroxisomes. These are the internal organs. Kaya sila guys, more yan sila og hydrochloric acid na sudlanan. Imugin na sa ablihon, mayabo na sila, mayabo ng hydrochloric acid. So, kung may buhaton sa acid, di ba, iya tunaon, it will melt, disintegrate material. So, if ever a cell membrane is damaged and all the organelles spill out, mayabo nag-appeal ang lysosomes ug peroxisomes. So, iya po nang lutuon ang cells tapad niya, actually. Of course, the heat will also catalyze that, speed up the process. So, again, that's for the, if you want to be anaphysio-kines. So, guys, ingnan yung panel na, ingnan mo, mauwaw na mangutan ng mid part, mingon na, mangutan na pa. Kaya ba mo ito? I assure you, no joke, mangutan na pa gina, bili ka na, top notch na. No, dagko na gato. Imagine, nagigingnan yung anak, yung mangutan na pa nag-mid part, mauwaw na, mingon na sa uban panel. Nis, mas patag mid part. Maikog ng ko. You know, guys, you need to do that in your Reva. Next, electrical. This time, again, electrical, it's due to the electrical impulse going into the nerves. That's the mechanism of injury. You know, because your nerves are conductive, di ba? Be careful to lick my black. Yan ako ingnon. Basig na mahaginahan gila pala gawin or lola. Worst of all, lola, no? So, diba, it's the most conductive part of your body. So, most of the electrical impulse there, it causes burns. Other effects, no? Say domestic can cause cardiac arrhythmia. Dili siya domestic. What was the term for domestic? Not domestic, pero 200 volts. 200 volts. There's another term for that, but 200 volts can actually cause cardiac arrhythmias. If you already have a heart problem, yeah, you get 200 volts, you can cause anerrhythmia. Muna sila lolo, kuyaw na sila, hoy! Hilak ko ka. High voltage, again, 1000 volts or greater. Flash injury is burns to exposed parts. So, usually, muna siya for lightning, makilatan ka. Yeah, though na iceberg phenomenon, nagipoy part yan na ma-burn. That's what you call a flash injury. Na expose siya to that electrical impulse, naluto ang skin. Lastly, chemical. It can either be acidic or alkali. Sir, why does a alkalinic or acidic substance cause a burn? Because it's basically like heat will break down such cells, no? But instead of due to there being a catalyst, it's because of chemical substance that causes the breakdown. Next, signs and symptoms, no? So yun, superficial, no? This is the tab, no? The table. Superficial is what we call the wala na may. This is what we call the first degree burn, you know, so first degree burn. So the superficial epidermis is damaged. So not the whole epidermis, but just the superficial epidermis. This is what we usually get when we have a sunburn. So usually color is pink. So kanang mga they spend, usually di kita kabantay ni kung itom kagamay. But if you're a bit white, makabantay juga na, no? You spend a bit too much out of the sun, mo pink na yung face. Makabantay mo ng mga kano, di ba? Kanang mga kano, mga puti ka na kano, di ba? If mga santan sila mo pink pa na siya, 'di ba, kung mainit. That's already a superficial burn. So the pain is minimal to moderate. The blisters, there are none. Wala pa yung blisters. Very superficial pa na siya. There is no replacement of the skin. Okay? Replaceable pa man ang superficial epidermis. Diba? Remember, the lucidum and the corneum are replaceable. They're the uppermost layers. Though, naman po yung free nerve endings diha, that's why there's minimal to moderate pain because there's still nerve endings there, man. Healing time, very quick, 3 to 7 days na siya, and there's no scar potential. Of course, because it's the most superficial, man. Next one is superficial partial. So, superficial partial, or the second degree burn, super epidermis and upper dermis na ang affected. Okay? Red na ni siya. Nano red na ni siya, sir? Why is this red and not pink? Kaya naabot naman ang damage sa upper dermis. And when the damage has reached the upper dermis, mas daghan man og vascular tissue there. So, mas puwa siya. The pain is now moderate to severe, and there are now blisters. Why? Kay living tissue naman yun ang naigo. Take note if living tissue na ginamuigo, blisters na ni blisters may form. Again, if living tissue is now affected, there will now be blisters formation. Ano man, nawa ang water retention. Diba, remember what layer gani of the epidermis is for water retention? Ang sa gina layer, can anyone answer? Layer of the skin that has water retention? Granulosum. Meaning naluto na pag-appeal si granulosum. Nilusot na siya sa granulosum. So less than 2 weeks na siya. So required na 2 weeks before the damage is saved. Scar potential minimal. Though pwede ka magka-scar, pero it's very minimal, very rare. Next one is the third degree burn. No? Third degree burn or your not third degree. Kaya yung superficial partial o si deep partial, second degree ni siya. Full thickness is the third degree. Di naman kayo ni gamiton si first degree, second degree, third degree mangyod because mas specific man is superficial, partial, deep partial, and full thickness. But again, when you say second degree burn, it refers to either a superficial partial or a deep partial. Okay, again, when you say superficial, first degree, second degree, it's either superficial partial or deep partial. And when you say third degree, full thickness burn na siya. Okay. So for deep partial, this is the most painful type of burn. Why? Why is this the most painful type of burn? It's the worst pain you can feel in your life. Naluto. Do you remember which skin or which layer of the skin has more have more nerve endings? Epidermis or dermis? Di ba dermis? Awa ang unsang affected sa deep partial. Epidermis and dermis na. Dili rang upper dermis. So nangaluto na tanan ang inyuhang nerve endings. So if atong unanaon, if ang free nerve endings, let's look at your skin like this, guys. There are some parts that are taller than the others. So more or less, let's say in a class, let's say nagkuyog mo ni Sir Daryl. Si Sir Daryl, superficial burn, mapamati na ko na kita. Ako may pinakataas na layer. Sakit. Pag-igabot sa second degree burn, no, kini sa superficial partial, naigo na si Bobby. Naigo na si Ethan. No, naigo na kisa pa may mga taas ninyo. Naigo na si Mariah. Naigo na kisa pa may mga taas ninyo. Mga taas ninyo. Nagsagit na, no, si Bobby, nagsagit nag-appeal, agay! Si Ethan, naigo na po ng agay! Si Patricia, naigo na po, agay! Pag-hot man. Pag-abot sa deep partial, naigo na nag-appeal sila kung may mas mga pangan. Pero naigo na ng uban, no? Mga dili kay blessed vertically, no? Nagsyagit na tanan, no? Ni-appeal nagsyagit ang uban. Lema mo yung mas pangan, basig super balita na punta na. Maestro, nalabayan og sapatos og estudyante, kiningon siya na mubo siya. Bitaw. Sa kanan, appeal ang uban. No? So that's why, guys, when you do, take note, if you want to have a good grade in the REVA, draw the layers of the skin, and when you get to your what we call to your patophysial, draw it good na. Miss, this is what happens. Naluto ang dermis kay superficial. Goodbye. Kabantay ka, miss, gamay ra og nerve endings dire. So dili kay sakit. Oh my God! 10, 9, di ay. Nano 9 naman, sir. According to Pedretti, ay 10 automatic. According to Pedretti, miss, this is the layers of the skin. Maluluto to, ang inapatay lahat ng epidermis. Minimal to moderate lang. Bakit? Yung ibang nerve endings, yung ibang mga receptors nasa baba, nasa dermis. Do that! I assure you, do that. And when you say BMS, draw the layers of the skin. Show the receptors na kumugraduan. I assure you. That's what I did. I got a grade of 81 in my first REVA. That's what I did. I swear to you, do it. Sayon king burns. Sayon king burns. Next one. Again, the partial epidermis and dermis, not just the upper dermis, not just the papillary layer, but also the reticular layer underneath. Red yapon siya because it's vascularized. Severe pain. Again, kaya nangaluto, tanan, mga receptors. Broken blisters na siya. Nanuman, wala na yung layer na nag-cover sa water that's trying to come out. That's why broken na siya. Muni ang basa na skin. Kaya mo na, kasi kasaway there na burn niya, medyo magnana ang skin, deep partial na siya. Kasi kasaway na, na-burn ka niya, wala kay blisters. Di ba na-assign na, I tried the second degree burn, na blister ka na more bitaw ka ng murag, kita mo bubble wrap, more siya kaya na more bubble wrap yung mong skin. Ikaabot sa deep partial, wala na, broken blister siya, magnana na gid na inyong panit. Greater than 2 weeks na siya. Kaya imong dermis naluto na gina siya. Scar potential high. Oh, grabe na gina. Dako na gina chance for scar potential. Full thickness, naluto ang epidermis, naluto ang dermis, naluto ang hypodermis. No pain. Why is there no pain? Wala na kay receptors na bilin. Again, why is there no pain? Naluto nag-appeal ang epidermis, naluto nag-appeal ang dermis, naluto nag-appeal ang hypodermis, wala na nabilin, naluto na tanan. Okay? There are no more receptors to feel pain. Okay, again, there are no more receptors that will feel the pain. That's why no more pain. No more pain. 3rd-degree burn. Wala na nabilin. What does it look like? It looks either pale or charred. Pale, why? Kay hypodermis na lang or fascia ang makita. Charred, kay wala gyud. Naluto na gyud. Tukstugo na ka. No pain. The blisters are dry because there is no longer any vascular tissue there. Wala na blood vessels. Patay na tanan. Uga pa kas uga. Wala na nabilin. Permanent damage. This will now require surgical intervention. Okay? Surgical intervention. Scar potential, wala na. Finish na. Sama na giga. No scar na giga. Okay? So again, look at your skin like a three-story house. The topmost part of the house is the epidermis, the middle part is the dermis, and the lowest part is the hypodermis. The damage will always start from the superficial part all the way down. That's why I told you, if you do the BMS and the pathophysio, you do it good. You show na the damage on epidermis, miss. Na sir, the damage on dermis, miss. So napaksit ang 3rd floor. 2nd degree, napaksit ang 2nd floor. Nabili ng 3rd floor. 3rd degree, patay, nahurot na gitanan. Yuta na yung nabilin. No more skin. You need to do that. Okay. Again, this is how you demonstrate it. No, it's superficial ang epidermis lang. Superficial dermal, ang epidermis o ang upper layer of the dermis. Deep thermal, ayun na, no, hurot, epidermis of dermis, and lastly, full thickness, tanan na burn. Okay. So complications, I'll just run through this quite quick because we're hapit na so. Again, I don't want to take your time. So again, you can leave na good. If you want to stay to learn more, you can stay. But again, you're not required not to stay. So infection number 1, very common. The most common causes of infection are your Staphylococcus and your Pseudomonas. Pseudomonas aeruginosa actually causes pimples. That's why na medication for pimples, you just need, you can drink amoxicillin as provided by your dermatologist. Kasi na derma, kasi yung derma, nagyatagan kag tambal, it's because Pseudomonas ang cause sa pimples. Mga microbacterial infections are the leading cause for sepsis. That's why kanang mga 2nd degree, 3rd degree burn, kinahanglan gyud sa mutumar o tambal kay wala naman na protected ilang skin, wala na protected ilang body pwede sila ma-infected. Okay. Inhalation injuries, a lot of, let's say, nasunog inyong balay or you experienced a fire, a lot of the more common burns are not actually on the face of the body but in the lungs. Okay? You breathe in, let's say, daghang biya kay kanang ashes that float around in a fire, ma-breathe in man nimo, mukos na siya burns in the lungs and the throat. How do you know if naka-inhalation burn ka or inhalation injury? The facial burns, that's one sign. So meaning niagi na sa imong face because when you breathed in, naimog yung nahigop. That's why if naisunog, you're supposed to cover yourself up with something and cover your mouth. You should cover your mouth. If you don't, masunog ka. You're going to experience burns. You're going to experience pneumonia later on. You have singed nasal hairs. So ay kalipay na, hoy, wala lagi ko'y kuan, wala ko'y buhok sa ilong. Goodbye, Cecilia. Harsh cough, giubok og mayo because your lungs have been burnt na. Your trachea has been burnt, a lot of your lungs have been burnt. Hoarseness of the voice, so na-damage yung imong larynx. Abnormal breath sounds because there's now accumulation of debris in your lungs and there is burns na good in your airways. Abnormal respiratory distress, naglisod ka ginhawa. Kana kuya na ganyan, na-burn na gid imong lungs na. Carbonaceous sputum, what do you mean by carbonaceous sputum? Black sputum. Kalagi black sputum ang imong client, na-burn na yung lungs. And lastly, hypoxemia. So, kana, severe na yung na. Naglisod na siya ginhawa, nag-blue na yung face, nag-blue na yung body, kuya na siya. Pneumonia is the leading cause of death due to burns. It's not because of the burns, but due to the pneumonia. Okay? Next, it actually affects your metabolic rate. It increases your metabolic rate because burns cause your body to burn your your glucose, your protein, your fat faster, because when you have when you do something, guys, when your body is acting up, there is any damage to your body, mula ingnon yung mukaon mo, because your body is trying to feed all of those cells that are fighting back the infection or trying to regenerate. So di mo mga tinol gina, when you're sick, you need to eat because your metabolic rate actually increases. Muna, that's why also if nakay burn or you're sick, you also increase in temperature because a lot of your cells are performing activities at a faster rate. Next, there is sudden and rapid weight loss, of course, because again, imong bodies are eating up a lot of your energy, a lot of your carbohydrates, your proteins, your fats, and there is an increase in core temperature. Next, cardiovascular complications, so you can have edema. No, there's also what we call hypovolemic shock. Hypovolemic shock. This happens when your blood water volume is below 30%. Less than 30% water volume. So, ang imong water volume in your body, ninaog na siya 30%, you will undergo hypovolemic shock, mamatay ka na. You will die. Okay? So, one cause of death for that is hypovolemic shock. Usually, makaibaw ta na if you're prone to hypovolemic shock because 30% body burn ka. So 30% of your body has been burned or greater, you are prone to hypovolemic shock because a lot of your body no longer retains water. Diba? I told you that the skin is for water retention. Nigawas ng tubig sa imong lawas. So you're prone for hypovolemic shock, mamatay ka na. Because the body, as we know, is 60 to 70% water. Mugawas gid ng tubig sa imong lawas, mamatay ka. Next, heterotrophic ossification, very common. The most common site of HO in your burns because when you have burns, diba, you have what we call HO due to hypertrophy or contractures. Gahi ang imuhang tissue. So the most common area for burns, the most common site for HO and burns is elbows. The next are the hips and the next are your shoulders. If you notice, the areas, these are usually the most mobile areas of the body. Di naman mo lihukon. And these areas are not used to not being moved. So they are very prone for heterotrophic ossification. That's why one of the primary interventions for burns is AROM and PROM. Right? So occurs in full thickness burn sites, usually is HO. Next, neuropathy. Of course, if you have burns, especially electrical burns, mo burn ng imuhang neurons. And this can affect conduction, so you might have what we call paralysis. Next, pathological scars. There are two types of scars, hypertrophic and keloid scar. Ako ang plan B for keloid scar is kilo D. Kilo D. Di ba itong mga idol kaya are always more than what we expect them to be. Di ba? Idulo ninyo eh. Rubiha ninyo eh. That's why we call them idol. So muna yung keloid scar. Idol kay sila, no? Nilapas sila sa ilang dapat buhaton. So they cross the wound border. No, that's why they're called again kilo D or keloid. Wala akong plan B ni kilo D, no? So, grabe mo brother, nilapas naman ka blood, no? Next. Of course, there are 3 stages of healing, as we all know. I'm just going to run through it with you again because I think you already know about this. Inflammatory stage, last 3 to 10 days. Some books will tell you 1 to 10 days. The first 10 days basically is the inflammatory phase. Mo dagko ang blood vessels, migration of the neutrophils and monocytes, and fibroblasts. No? Proliferation phase starts at the 3rd day. No, revascularization, reepithelialization, wound contraction occurs, and fibroblast aggregation and collagen aggregation. Lastly, maturation phase wherein the wound is now maturing, remodeling is happening. This is the last 2 or more years. No, dugay good. Depending, of course, on sa kagrabe po ng damage. Pero usually, if grabe mga second degree, deep, paano na sila? Usually, abot na 6 months to 2 years. Next, medical eval. So this is your rule of 9s, the quick assessment. So the face is 4.5. The back of the head is 4.5. The chest is 18% in total, 9% for the upper body, 9% for the lower body, 1% for the inguinal area or the genital area, 9% for the front and back of your feet, and 4.5% for the front and back of your hands. So this one, you can practice this on your own. So again, 9, basically 9 ang ulo. I remember this as this, Robito, guys. 9 ang ulo. No, 9 ang ulo. Di ko na 36 ang chest, front and back. 9, 9, 18, 18. So, naisayaw ana, no? 9, 9. So, again, naisayaw na 9, 9, 18, 18, 36, 36, 1, 1. 9, 9, no? 9, 9, 9, 9, 18, 18, 36, and 1. Okay, balik. Let's do this together. 9, 9, 9, 9, 18, 18, 36, and 1. So, kamo may bahala diya. So, again, 9, 9, 9, 9, 18, 18, 36, and 1. Ang 18, 18 akong hikap akong tail. Hindi ako magbarog. Again, 9, 9, 9, 9, 18, 18, 36, and 1. Yeah. So, see, rule of nines is the faster assessment. No? If magdadali mo, because you need to know if hypovolemic shock ang client, you go to rule of nines. The more detailed one is the Lunden-Browder. Detail specific na siya. Nabagay na siya for the age groups. Dapat na siya sa O. But we can do this if we want a more specific evaluation. No, and it's also assesses by region. Dili yun like ang kamot lang, ang ulo, per region gid siya. But again, it's time consuming and usually we only use rule of nines. Research siya dumdumon. Kaya naman chart for this. Don't worry, you're not expected to remember Lunden-Browder chart. Wala. Nagay CI na mutana or na kanang reva, moingon na, unsay kuan sa Lunden-Browder. Joke lang ha. Ay, sayang na. Di na pwede. Sure ko, di pwede na kayo numdum. Kung tanong sa, ikaw, Demis, ikaw ako na ba, Lunden-Browder chart. Ako na po yung magkuhan, reba ni mo, Lunden-Browder chart na ba? Face, nose, ears. Narrow of 9 na siya. So again, 9, 9, 8, 9, 9, 9, 9, 18, 18, 36, and 1. Madali lang yan. So this is the Lunden-Browder. Diba, libog. Surgical intervention, we're almost on the last slide, guys. So we're grafting, we have 4 types of grafting. Autograft, meaning from the body. Usually, ang pinaka-common site is the thigh. Okay, medyo dabko-dabko, medyo size, a lot of skin. Next one is the buttocks. And lastly is the back. Last, nagyod na choice ang back, ang paan. Homograft is the same species. Usually, we use a cadaver. Okay, na sir. Dili po ka ng cadaver na inyong nakitaan sa, abot, if nakasuway ba mo, nakabot pa ba mo, na nakakita mo cadaver sa room, sa 5th floor, nakalimutan sa room. Dili ka na cadaver, ha ka ng fresh na cadaver. Oy, Maria, di pwede kalain. Xenograft, other species, the most common species, the pig. Kay pigs and humans are actually anatomically very similar, especially the skin. So, kung ayaw mo panugsog sa lechon belly, kay pwede mo attachan na xenograft. And lastly, isograft if you have a twin. Oh, debridema. There's also, debridema is a surgical intervention which is the removal of the vitalized tissue. Ng tamo ni mong tissue. This is very important, guys, in our practice as OTs. Mudutag debridema. My teacher before, gipakita gimi nila. Ang buhatos debridema, isamad balik. Ano isamad balik, sir? Because we need that fresh blood to get into the wound site, to bring all of those fibroblasts, to bring all those nutrients, to bring all of that collagen to speed up the process of healing. So, samadon din niyag tuyo. So, there are 4 types of debridema. Autolytic, meaning using of the body's own enzyme. So, it does it by its own. If you're going to go through autolytic na debridema, it basically saying na pasigdiyan ng samad, limpyuhan na tana, let the enzymes that go out do everything on its own. Enzymatic, you use chemicals. Mechanicals, you use hydroirrigation or the most common maggots. Very common in the maggots currently, they leave a very clean scar because maggots don't eat living tissue. They only eat dead. And lastly, sharp. So, muna ang gitudlo sa mong teacher, huwag isang scalpel, iyang gilimpyuhan una, no, he took gauze, either gauze or scalpel na. Kung gauze, imugyod ibagnos ang samad. Like, imugyod i-rub ang gauze, hantod mo dugo. Para mo gawas ang blood, para mo heal ang site. I don't know if backed up by research pa na siya karon, pero yung siya effective man daw, so backed up particularly. Lastly, medication. So the most common one is silver sulfadiazine. This is the last question. Now, most commonly used topical agent. No, so this is very common for Pseudomonas infection. But remember, Pseudomonas are aeruginosis, something as causes of infection. So si silver sulfadiazine ang gamito na. Next one is mefenide acetate. Very good for eschar. What do you mean by eschar? Kanang bitang naka-scabs, may formations na of dark tissue, kanang kasi Bisaya na. Kaya mo kasi Bisaya sa scab. Basta if nalagay scab formation, mefenide acetate na siya, kaya mulusot na siya sa tissue, sa scab tissue. Okay? Very good for gram-negative or gram-positive organisms can be affected by silver sulfadiazine. And lastly, silver nitrate. This is very good for bacterial infections. No? So again, very effective against gram-negative. No? So method of application, kamo ni bahala na. So these are your medications. Silver sulfadiazine is a cream. Next one is silver nitrate. Silver nitrate is the powder. And sulfamylone cream. No? Si mafenide acetate. So, short quiz review. No, I think you remember na. Sige, let's do a short quiz review. Let's go back to the first questions. Let's see if you can answer them. Last sige ni guys, I just want to know if 10 out of 10 na ba mo? Ako lang siya. Balikon. Kadiyot lang yun eh. Kadiyot na. Last slide naman to siya. Nara ko yung video recommendations that you can choose. Okay. Oh no. Bakit ganyan? Kadiyot lang yun. Present this page. Oy. Sa akin eh. Ay, kapoy. Sige, let's answer the questions, no? Para sure na di na tayo masayop balik, kaya they might come up in the exam. Number 1, what's the answer? What is the largest organ of the body? Chat in the chat box. So again, para ma-perfect na ta, skin, good. What is the most common cause of burns in children? Perfect. What do you call the phenomenon where the nerves under skin are burned? Iceberg phenomenon. Perfect. What is the layer of the skin with the most germinating cells? Okay, germinativum or basale. What layer of the epidermis is absent in some parts of the body? Lucidum. Usually, lucidum is found in what parts of the body, Dabi? Usually found in what part of the body? Yes, good. What receptor is responsible for cold? Cold. Good. What is the stage of healing wherein fibroblasts aggregate? Nabot ng mga fibroblasts. Sige to, fibroblastic phase. Very good. What zone response? Law of local response contains a lot of dead tissue. Coag, good. 4 rule of nines. Phase. Pila ang phase? 4.5, good. And lastly, what do you use most commonly for prevention of infection? Prevention of, okay, silver sulfadiazine. Okay, perfect. So, in the last part of my slide, katulad tong mga video recommendations. You can watch them to help you learn more. Are there any questions? Thank you guys for staying. Again, you're not required. Maghugas yung kudaan. You're not required to stay. Are there any questions? There you go. Share my device ni Pedros. Okay. Any questions? Questions? None? Okay, so if there are none, I hope you learned something. I'll be posting an SDL later tonight. Post na ko guys, I swear. Oh, no, I can't post. Wala shelo. Marcelo. I'll just share it sa OT through 8. Please lang do it and I'll ask you to send it by group to Diggy guys because Miss Bea will be asking for the SDL. Mo mo. Saka na, I'll just be posting SDL. Saturday pa man ang deadline. Don't worry, Saturday pa ang deadline. Don't worry. So Saturday pa ang deadline. So that will be all for tonight. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you learned something and have a good day. Bye-bye, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Bye, sir. Bye, sir.